Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Pocan for giving us the opportunity to address these impacts. Thank you. Congress failed San Diego and America last week by not working together to find a sensible alternative to the sequester. It's a piece of legislation that was intentionally crafted to be so nonsensical that Congress will be forced to do everything in its power to avoid it. I'm here today because we have a choice. We can choose to continue down this path and let the American people down, or we can decide to make a change. And I hope we'll view March 27th, which is the end of the continuing resolution, as an opportunity to pass a budget and not another opportunity to avoid our responsibilities. We can turn the indiscriminate cuts into the sequester into targeted cuts that are part of a larger and balanced deficit reduction strategy, a strategy that doesn't cut critical infrastructure investments, stifle scientific innovation, or compromise our national defense. Let me give you a few examples from my district in San Diego. And I've spoken repeatedly about how my district is disproportionately affected by the sequester. The infrastructure investments we've made in the Port of San Diego have helped the port become San Diego's window to national and international commerce, as well as a main driver of our economy. The port is the 4th largest port in California and one of 17 commercial strategic ports in America. That means they're available to our military if they need to ship supplies out of them. It oversees 2 marine cargo terminals, 2 cruise ship terminals, and hundreds of maritime leases to small businesses. Since 2001, the port's received almost $22 million in federal funding for critical infrastructure projects. That's allowed the port to hire more San Diegans and boost San Diego's economy. The American Society of Engineers found that with an additional investment in our ports of $15.8 billion between now and 2020, $15.8 billion, our national system of ports provide $270 billion in U.S. exports and $697 billion in GDP. The main drivers of San Diego economy, though, are our scientific research community and our military. In fiscal 2012, San Diego firms received more than $130 million from the National Science Foundation and $850 million from the National Institutes of Health. It's these types of investments that have created hundreds of thousands of jobs, boosted our economy, and allowed San Diego to become the 2nd largest life science cluster in the United States. The sequester could undo this progress. The immediate cuts to NIH from sequestration are 8.2%, or an equivalent to a cut of $2.5 billion. This could result in the loss of 33,000 research-related jobs in 2013 and a $4.5 billion decrease in economic activity. We all see innovation as one of our ways to move forward as a country, and the uncertainty caused by not having a budget reduces our national competitiveness. The sequester threatens our border. It would cut Customs and Border Protection's work hours by 5,000 agents, increasing the time it takes to screen people and shipments. Those inefficiencies will drive up costs and also harm businesses because trade can't move across the border in the legal trade that we need. And almost 1 in 4 jobs in San Diego are defense-related. Nearly 25% of defense contractors are small businesses. Already, ship building and maintenance contracts have been canceled, including 10 ship repairs in San Diego. Manufacturing companies that rely on defense funding could lose 223,000 jobs, 30,000 in our county about. Neglecting ship repairs will only hurt morale, not only hurt morale, but lead to job loss and threaten our readiness. The Navy will be forced to put a freeze on hiring civilians, many of whom are veterans, with 11.5% of our community's veterans unemployed and a shocking 25% of veterans between 18 and 24 still struggling to find employment. Any further reduction in job opportunities for our nation's heroes is unacceptable. We can do better. I know that protecting these areas of investment are ideas that both Democrats and Republicans can agree on. Now's the time to ignore those party pressures and do what's right for the American people. Our fiscal problems are real, and I know you're aware of that. You've heard that all. We need to address those in a smart and strategic way. The budget process will allow us to put aside the indiscriminate nature of the sequester and to give us an opportunity to protect our infrastructure, science and technology communities, and the military that not only are driving forces of our economy, but are obviously at the root of our security as a country. We can increase revenues by closing tax loopholes, stop spending in the tax code on things we can't afford, and we can decrease our spending on wasteful programs and cutting redundant and outdated programs and waste, fraud, and abuse. Finding common ground doesn't mean we've failed. It doesn't mean we've abandoned our principles. But let's show San Diego and America that Congress can do its job. Let's pass the balanced budget without the sequester and address the revenue and spending challenges that we face. I thank you both for your work and for the opportunity to appear today.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Do we have a question? Sure.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Peters. I understand you talked about how the budgeting process hurts San Diego specifically, but you mentioned in your testimony that it hurts American competitiveness. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, please?
Sure, and I'll just tell you the story I heard at the Salk Institute, which is one of the research institutes we're very proud of. They depend heavily on funding from the National Institutes of Health. And they explained to me that kids who are educated and want to go into science and do really high-end science, you know, you have to be almost 40 years old before you get one of those labs where you can start to compete for those grants. And then you're competing in the smartest classroom you can imagine. Everyone is extremely smart. It's peer-reviewed. And typically only 25% of those grants have been funded. So you can imagine, even in good times, a 75% failure rate. Well, now we're funding about 7% of those grants. And what they told me is that young people who are deciding where to do their science are looking at Congress, looking at the American government, deciding and really asking themselves, are we committed to consistent and adequate funding for scientific research? And the problem is that there are now opportunities to do those research projects in other countries that are making those investments. So we face the prospect that the next cure for a great disease, or the next Qualcomm, which is in my district, or the next Google or Microsoft, is invented by someone who's educated here, maybe someone who's educated at the University of California, San Diego, but who moved to China or Europe or Israel or Brazil, where they're making the investments in science that they need to do their research. And it's not just a matter of the funding level now, but it's also the uncertainty caused by really the way we haven't addressed our budget issues. So I think if we could get through the budget process, provide some assurance that we're going to be consistent, we're going to fund science in a consistent and adequate way, we can continue to lead the world. But we should not take that for granted. We should do our job here.